it's very important. For example, we have an annual survey in the Association of Data Protection Officers about data protection matters, not just personal data breaches, but one of the topics we ask our members is, what are you experiencing on personal data breaches? And the large majority of data breaches that occur are caused by just mistaken activities, by not malicious abuse of data, we were hearing about in the last presentation there a moment ago, but just mistakes made.
The idiot factor, which exists, and that is always going to, and I think that's something that I've noticed quite a lot when I've been reporting on this, is that, again, as I said at the top, you can have all the systems and all the software, but if I'm running late and I'm dropping my niece to school and I'm also due on air in 20 minutes and I get a text in saying your parcel is ready to go, click this link, it does rely to a certain extent on the human factor. It's not always super malicious, but it is relying on that weakness.
And you think it was in the first panel discussion this morning, there was a brief debate at the end of it, was whether it was the people or systems that were, going back to, for example, making data breach notifications or any cybersecurity incident notifications to your line manager or whoever is appropriate in the organisation. If you're nervous about being held responsible yourself, you might not make that notification, so that it'd be a risk for the organisation. But as a reasonable thought given by a chief information security officer in another organisation I was working with, say that if there's repeated mistakes made by a staff member, then there should be perhaps they should be perhaps held responsible for it. His rule of thumb was if there was 3 security incidents caused by the same person, there should be discipline against them. As Al Capone was, once is an accident, twice a coincidence, but 3 times is enemy action.
And I do think it comes back to the point that we had on one of the earlier panels, and Sarah might come to you with this, is this idea of having somebody on every team within the organisation who is the point person, essentially. So if something comes on within Team X, Team Y, or Team Z, they all have their first team member to go to before it gets escalated and before it gets escalated again. Is that something that you think would be beneficial? And it might also build up those other team members who maybe don't work in IT or cybersecurity, but gives them that sense of responsibility and an extra morale boost that they are part of the protection team.
Yeah, I think security champions are a really good idea. And somebody mentioned earlier on, it is everybody's responsibility. Security definitely is. And I think awareness is key, and people need to know how to respond, and to report an incident straight away obviously is very critical to how big it might get, is that kind of early interaction. But I think for an awareness and training campaign, I think the risk management objectives for the organisation need to be known. And I think the training then needs to be kind of specific to the organisation, systems, procedures, policies, that kind of thing. And then I think it can be integrated a lot easier and taken up then a lot better maybe and understood by the users.
And you've mentioned that you've been working in this field for a long time. Do you see a difference in the different generations in terms of what motivates them, what I suppose will keep them, will either retain them or see them run out the door to another gig, particularly when they're working in cybersecurity, because we know that these skills are highly valuable.
Yeah.
So the different generations have different needs, wants, and aspirations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think compensation is obviously going to be a key driver, and that's probably number one. And then well-being, I think, as well. A lot of people are looking for that work-life balance as well, and they want to know, do organisations kind of have that work-life balance? And that's often a question that you might see in an interview: is what's the culture like, or the work-life balance like? I think as well, the next kind of generation, Gen Z, as well, what they're kind of looking at organisations is for their values, as well as kind of what they're offering. And some organisations are kind of better than others at that. And I don't know if you follow Salesforce on LinkedIn, but they're very good at kind of advertising, their values, and they talk a lot about trust, customer success, innovation, equality, and then recently sustainability is kind of a new one added on there. And I think a lot of young people are looking at those values and saying, do they kind of match with mine? And particularly the likes of sustainability and that kind of thing is top of mind as well for those people, I think, looking for roles. And that does, I think, affect their choice, because they do have a lot of choice and a lot of offers, now for roles, and they can kind of pick and choose what they want. So that becomes a factor as well. Does it align with my values?
Yeah, and so Niamh, like in your experience then, in those scenarios where, like I don't know if you're all on TikTok, but like I always see these videos of like quiet quitting and why I'm only doing X and Y, but I'm not doing Z, and it's not part of my gig. What is the retention factor for that Gen Z, that younger generation, particularly when their skills are in demand?
So building on what Sarah and Fintan have said here already, it's about trust. So it's the ethical use of data. And that's really what I see as the difference. So my team is called Trust and Security. At Fenergo, we are a security first organisation. So what does that mean? We're all responsible for security. Every single member of the organisation gets a security first objective. So at the end of the year, they have the opportunity to demonstrate the little things that they've done throughout the year to help protect Fenergo, its clients' data and its partners' data. So it's totally ingrained in everything that they do. It's part of our EPIC values as well. So on a quarterly basis at our all hands, we call out individuals and team members that have gone over and beyond to demonstrate that trust. Mm-hmm. You talked about retention and retaining talent within cybersecurity industry is really about helping them feel part of the team, belonging. And again, that's down to the culture that we foster and grow in our day-to-day roles. So within Fenergo, I have a dotted reporting line to our CEO and our board. I have a 10-minute stand-up with them on a monthly basis. And so there's the top down to it, as well as the bottom up around making it part of everybody's responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And Fintan, the issue of retention, I think, is something that's very important. How valuable is lifelong learning for your cybersecurity team? Because it's not enough to hire somebody when they're just out of college, they have a degree and that's fantastic, and they're still in the company 35 years later having not done diddly squat in terms of upskilling and understanding the new challenges, opportunities and threats that are out there with new technologies.
Yeah, well, we all need to be doing continuing professional development. If you're not learning, you're dying. Mm-hmm. So that should be a standard for any profession, mm-hmm. and certainly for cybersecurity, and also for the Association of Data Protection Officers, which is, by the way, as I put it, a semi-autonomous special interest group of the Irish Computer Society, and likewise the Irish Computer Society members are expected to be doing CPD.
So it's a realm that is worth constantly upskilling, but it's also the onus then is on companies as well to invest in that education and not the once off, because I was joking about it a few days ago that when GDPR came in, everybody in my organisation had to sit through briefings, we sat through panel talks, we then did a quiz and it was fantastic. But if you were to go in and ask everybody in my office what are the principles of GDPR, chances are none of them would know, because why would they? But I'm intrigued to know how much of an onus is on, like I know quite a bit about Salesforce, for example. I know that there's a lot put into educating and encouraging and developing employees right across the organisation. But how important is it that it's more than just a PowerPoint presentation, that it is education that people can get a piece of paper for or take something away and implement it into their day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be kind of embedded. Definitely, it needs to be broad, across the whole organisation. Absolutely, it's very important.
And Niamh, do you think that there is the hunger there from the younger the younger workers' point of view to envisage that longevity with their career rather than chasing paycheck to paycheck? A few years ago, when all the tech companies were booming here in Ireland, there were those who just went from one to the other to get the experience, but also get the perks, get the ping pong table and the beer keg on a Friday. That era is over now, I think, to a certain extent.
I don't know about that.
Really?
I'm all about taking your cybersecurity passion and making it happen. And I don't know if I could summarize it in a word. It's just something that stands out in a person. I've started my own cybersecurity trainee program at Fenergo, where I'm giving people the opportunity to come onto the team, and we train them for 2 years and we put them through Fenergo University. I have the youngest member of my team here in the room, Amy. Do you want to stand up and give us a wave? Amy Behan.
Hi,
there
Amy.
she is. And so my first interaction to Fenergo in the Dublin office in person was with Amy. She showed up amazingly well in facilities management. She had her passion, and thankfully, and I'm delighted to say, she's joined my team there from the 1st of October. I'm super excited to have her on board, and I have no doubt that she is the future generation of cybersecurity.
Oh, that is lovely. Wow. And for companies that aren't as fortunate to have those facilities,
Yeah.
you know, for everybody in this room, they're obviously experts at what they do. So
What
does
is it?
mentorship come into it? Or, you know, how can people give back without that formal structure as such?
Yeah, I'd say I'm old school information security. I studied when it was all about data, and then the generation after me were all internet security, cyber security. Do we actually know the difference between cyber security and information security? It's all about protecting the data in my eyes, and that's where you drive your risk-based decisions on. And so that's when I noticed people coming for interviews. I was like, oh my God, they don't understand the principles of information security. They understand it at the technology level. We're in real big trouble here because the technology is going to constantly evolve. How are these people going to stay up to date? So I went back lecturing. I got participated in FIT to make sure that we as a nation, Ireland, are continuing to train our cybersecurity, information security professionals in the right way. You talked about technical training is vitally important, but it's really to understand the principles of security and how you apply it through business operations and technology. If you look at somebody's career path, what is really important as well is understanding the industry that they operate in, as well as helping them flex their muscles around their professional skills. So how are they going to become a CISO if they are not developing, making risk-based decisions or being able to communicate effectively? So it's the balanced approach to training. It's not just focusing on the latest greatest technology course, it's keeping it balanced. And then it's giving the people the opportunity in their day-to-day operations and supporting them through their development. I do a daily stand-up with my team, 10 minutes every morning, because it helps me see what development is needed within the team, what they're doing well on, and what we need to change as a team to protect Fenergo. So that's it in a nutshell. I feel like I've taken over there. Sorry for
it's
that.
great insight. It is fantastic to hear how it's being done. There's a great question here on Slido, and I'd be interested to hear what you all think. How do you make cybersecurity roles being perceived more positively and not just as blockers? No one likes being considered an impediment to business by their colleagues. So we might go down the row on this one. Fintan, what would you think of that one?
Well, it's protecting the organisation, protecting individuals. For example, the GDPR and the 6 fundamental principles in Article 5.1, they're legal obligations, but even if they weren't, they'd be in the organisation's best interest to things like, for example, obviously overlap between cybersecurity is the integrity and confidentiality principle that you must secure data. Likewise, it's like the retention of data, or not the data minimization. That's again, it's their obligations, but they're in the organisation's best interest. Likewise, for the cybersecurity staff, explaining how to secure the data. It's in individuals' best interest and the organisation's best interest. And
so Niamh, does that come down to how you frame it then? So because if it's all accepted, as Fintan says, and understood that it's in the company's best interest, is it around the communication when we talk about our cyber teams or our IT teams, that they're not just coming in to ruin your day and make you do 2FA for the sake of it?
Yeah, so how do you demonstrate that your team is a business enabler? And so for me, I grew up in a big GAA family. I've got 4 brothers, so I talk about it being a highly performing team like the Dubs, and I talk about your cybersecurity team are in your defence, and the rest of the organisation take their position on the pitch and we support them through it. And then your forwards, the ones that score the goals, are really how you differentiate it in your brand. And it's all how you work together around that. And I find when you bring in something that people can relate to, they understand the various different roles.
And Sarah, would you agree with that, that it's sort of the demystifying, de-jargoning of it all?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great point there. Niamh, all right, what you've mentioned there, but no, I mean, like, there's no doubt it is an overhead, and, you know, we talked about multi-factor authentication and, you know, what happens when it doesn't work and all that. But I think that it's sneaking into, you know, outside work now, and you can see that there's 2-factor authentication and that there's all these extra controls, you know, for your banking and for, you know, other services, that it's becoming a bit more, I think, normalised, and I think there's more awareness there, and people are kind of understanding, okay, this is important, and, you know, they will kind of, I think, then be on board a bit more. And I think people are coming on board a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's great to see that, you know, even having, as you said earlier on, having everyone in this room shows that, you know, that this, it's not just you. You're not the only person in the country that cares about this stuff. There's a group of us at it. A huge thank you to our panellists: Sarah Drury, Director, Security Engineering, Salesforce; Fintan Swanton, Senior Consultant, Managing Director at Cygnus Consulting, and the Chairman of the Association of Data Protection Officers; and Niamh Muldoon of Fenergo. That is it for the morning session. A huge thank you indeed for all of your questions, all of your tweets. You can now pop outside. If I could ask that you please take your personal belongings with you as you leave the room, and the roundtables will start very shortly. But thank you so much.